the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy Group. We're co-hosting this event with the Pitt Science Policy Group, University of Pittsburgh Science Policy Group. So first, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Shannon. I am the policy chair of the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy Group, shorthand PSPDG. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but there you go. I just wanted to real quick mention that we have three main branches: science communication, diplomacy, and policy. Science communication is sort of self-explanatory, but teaching scientists to communicate the work that they're doing to everyone. Science diplomacy is about using science to support international diplomatic relations and also using diplomacy to support international collaborations within the scientific community. And then science policy, which is what you're all sort of here for, is fundamentally about advocating for the use of scientific evidence in policymaking at all levels. And so we at PSPDG have a lot of opportunities for early career researchers to get hands-on training in all of these branches, and we hope that you'll check us out. All of our contact info will be shared at the end of the panel. And so I'm gonna introduce Cassandra and let her tell us a little bit about the Pitt Science Policy Group, and then she'll hand it over to Tala and Val, who will be introducing our panelists.
Hi, so like Shannon mentioned, my name is Cassandra and I'm part of the Pittsburgh Science Policy Group. Similar to UPenn's group, we focus on using evidence-based science to support law and legislation that is created within the US. We're mostly graduate-centered, not necessarily just science majors, open to all graduate students. A lot of our opportunities are heavily invested in like writing and legislation. So we have opportunities to do that. We work closely with local government as well as state legislation to kind of get our voice heard and to be more active members of the community. So that's pretty much it. I guess Tala and Val can go ahead and lead the way.
I would also like to interject and give a shout out to NSPN because we're both the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy Group as well as Pitt Science Policy Group are part of NSPN. And if it wasn't for our groups being part of that, we would have never met, and we wouldn't be bringing you this joint event together. And also a large majority of our panelists are also NSPN members. And so I'd just like to give that shout out.
Hey, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing the panelists. So first we have Chanel Matney. So Chanel is a former California Council of Science and Technology Fellow. So she did her PhD in neuroscience at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and she is currently a program officer in the Forum for Neuroscience and Nervous Systems Disorders at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. So welcome, Chanel. And our second panelist is Sarah Ackerman. So Sarah is a former Research America Policy Fellow. She did her PhD in biomedical science from the Rockefeller University, and she's currently a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow. And for anyone who's not aware of the AAAS, it's the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And so Val will continue with the introductions.
So next we have Jamie Helberg. The fellowship she's representing is the Summer Scholars at NSF. She did it in 2019 and 2020. She recently got her degree from Pittsburgh College, a BA in environmental analysis, and she is currently pursuing her master's in public policy with a concentration in environmental policy at Carnegie Mellon. And lastly, we have Eileen Wong representing the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. Recently, she got her PhD from University of Pittsburgh in molecular virology and microbiology, and she's currently on her second year in the fellowship.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna get started with questions. So yeah, also if the panelists want to say hi once we start going down the line, but yeah, so first question is, can you describe the fellowship that you did, who is eligible, and how many people are accepted? Yeah, I guess maybe we can start with Chanel.
Sure. Hi, everyone. How's my sound? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
I'm super excited to be here. I completed the CCST fellowship in the 2019 to 2020 year, and my service was in the California State Senate Education Committee. So the question was, who's eligible? Right, and so you don't have to have your degree in hand when you apply, but you do have to have your degree conferred by the time that you would be matriculating to start training. And so that's helpful if you're, sort of at that very last phase of sort of finishing things up in writing. The class traditionally had been a class of 10, but they recently expanded it to 15. And so that's great. The way the class is split is that some number would be assigned placements in the legislature. So you'd be serving members in committees like I did, or perhaps you'd be serving in a personal office, that is the personal office of an elected member. And then some fellows are placed in the executive branch, which is new and exciting. And there you'd be working with a state agency or a state department, or possibly the governor's office. So one side is sort of policy formation in the legislature, and the other side is more policy implementation and oversight in the executive branch. So I think that more or less covered that question briefly. Did I forget anything?
No, you're good. Thanks.
All right.
Maybe Sarah, do you want to go next?
Sure, hi. So I did the Research America Fellowship, and then I'm currently a AAAS Fellow, and I'm at USAID in the Office of HIV and AIDS. And I think someone else is going to do the AAAS Fellowship, so I'll do the Research America one, but if you have questions about USAID, let me know. So with the Research America Fellowship only accepts one fellow at a time, but it's usually 3 months to 6 months long. So it is competitive in the sense that it's only one person, but it's a shorter fellowship, so the turnover rate is a bit higher. Let's see, you don't have to have your degree to apply, but you do have to have the PhD by the time you start. The application is much less structured compared to AAAS or CCST. There isn't like a designated time. In fact, like I found out about it like 2 days before and then applied for it really quickly. And like the next time I looked at it, they had like extended the deadline. So it sort of has they basically keep asking for applications until they get somebody that they want for the position. Let's see, I'm forgetting the other pieces that I'm supposed to say, but it's it's just the one fellow, and you are there's no like specific topic, which is different from the AAAS fellowship. But I'll leave it there, and of course, happy to answer any more questions.
I think really quickly, Shannon had a question about the Research America fellowship you did. Is there also a undergraduate one there too?
Yes, there is actually. So they're called interns, and the PhD is called a fellow. And there's actually two sides. So there's both. I don't think there's a communications fellow, but there are communications interns and there are policy interns. And those are both either like undergraduate or like don't have your undergraduate degree yet. Like there was one person who was still pursuing hers at George Washington, and she was able to do this at the same time. Or there were a couple people that had just finished their undergraduate degree. And so yes, that is another option. And there were 3 of them at one point. So they're able to accept more of those than they are of fellows.
Thanks.
Eileen.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. I think between Sarah and I, we can cover the AAAS fellow pretty well. So for the AAAS fellowship, there are 3 different areas that you could do your fellowship in. It could be executive branch, legislative, or judicial. I'm not really aware of, I don't know if the last year if they had a judicial branch fellow, but I don't think there was one the year that I started. And so legislative branch, you get assigned to someone in Congress, and you work in their office for a year. And then for executive branch, you get placed in one of the agencies. So there's like NIH, USDA, USAID, State Department. There are more. Just DOE. So it's like across the different agencies, and it's very similar applications for the 3 different areas, but they are separate applications that you submit. Applications are due November 1st of every year, and I believe you have to have your PhD before you apply by November 1st. And there are some exceptions. So if you have a master's in engineering and certain amount of experience, I think you can also apply. It's a application, and then there is a panel interview and a policy memo submission. And then there's a finalist week where you interview with the different agencies and get placed in. So you meet all the different agencies, and then from that you get placed into one of the agencies. Similarly, the congressional fellows also have a week at the end of orientation where they interview with different congressional offices for their placement. And there are many executive branch fellows, I think like around 200 each year. And then there are fewer congressional fellows, I think around 30. And many of them are sponsored by specific professional societies. And I see a question about the panel interview. Yeah, if you want me to answer that question now.
Maybe we can save that for the breakout discussion,
Okay.
or if we have time later.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but we'll keep an eye out on that. Thanks, Eileen. And Tala, do you have a next question?
Yeah, sorry. I guess Jamie is our last one for this question.
Sorry.
All good. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jamie Hellberg. I was at the National Science Foundation in the summer of 2019 and this last summer, 2020. And both times I was placed in different directorates, different divisions. My first year, I was in the biology directorate, specifically in the cellular biology division. And this past summer, I was in their education directorate, looking at funding that's done in their undergraduate education division. And so in terms of eligibility, all students are eligible. Our cohort both years was around, maybe 15 to 20 students, but we all varied in terms of what degrees we were pursuing. I'll say that predominantly undergraduate, but there's always a few master's candidate and PhD candidates as well. And yeah, I don't know if I'm missing anything else from that question. Perfect. Thank you.
So the next question, again, for all of the panelists, would be if you could talk more about your work, what kind of projects you guys were involved in, anything to give us a better insight on what your day-to-day looked like.
And I'd like to add, if you know a little bit about like kind of the other fellowships that the other panelists did, like what kind of differentiates the particular fellowship you did from the other ones. That'd be cool to hear about. Thanks.
So Chanel, you could go ahead and start.
Sure. What for me what differentiated the CCST fellowship and what really excited me was that it's a state level and it focuses primarily on placing folks in the legislature where you work side by side with other legislative staffers moving bills. I was excited about California because it's the 5th largest economy in the world, and they're often at the forefront of emerging science and technology issues, particularly when it comes to things like health, natural resources, conservation, biotechnology, and those were all really interesting to me. My background sort of beginning in advocacy, I was excited to be in the room where decisions are being made, being someone that an elected member would turn to for advice, someone that a lobbyist would go to negotiate an amendment. So the day-to-day, the year is defined by the legislative calendar. So in the beginning of the legislative year, bills are born, right? And then depending on the topic area the bill deals with, I was in the area of education, it'll go through various committees, including the Education Committee. For those of us who remember some basic physics, it's a bicameral legislature, just like in the federal government. So it starts in one house, goes through a bunch of committees, and goes to the second house, and repeats the process all over again. The one thing that I really liked about this fellowship was getting really into the nitty-gritty of the nuts and bolts of this very labyrinthine policy process by which a bill goes from committee to committee, from hearing to hearing, and evolves quite a lot on its journey from the time that it's first drafted to the time that, if it survives all of those committees, gets to the governor's office. So in my particular placement where I was working alongside, they're called committee consultants. So these are the legislative staffers that are policy analysts. They specialize in a particular policy issue area. In my case, it was education. My subfield was like athletics and scholarships and financing. And I did some stuff with the LGBTQ students. So anytime a bill came that touched on that issue, you were the point person, and you would ask some questions. And this is where having a background as a scientist was useful to leverage. What is the bill trying to do? Is this the right solution to the problem it's trying to solve? Which groups will be affected? Sort of what are the consequences, good, bad, and unintended? Who's sponsoring the bill and what are their motivations? Are amendments needed? How are we going to get those amendments in? And that's just the policy side. But also you're working in a very political context as well. So who the author of the bill, the member who's carrying it, that matters. Are they part of the larger coalition? Someone's always going to have a problem with the bill. Even the most innocuous bills, have opposition. What's the nature of that opposition? What's the political history behind the bill? Almost no bills are new. It's usually just a similar idea being, rehashed for this time, this context, this population. So sort of knowing what forces are at play. Are there rivalries, at stake? And also that was sort of something very, very new to me, the California political side. Not all politicians got along. There are turf wars, Northern versus Southern California, coastal versus inland. Even within the Democratic Party, because California right now has a supermajority of Democrats, what that means is that it's over 2/3, so that the minority party has limited ability to block passage. Even with that, there are lots of differences in the shades of blue. Environmental Dems, more corporate Dems, the Fem Dems, feminine Dems, all the caucuses. And so getting into all of those dynamics, I guess to wrap it up, what I began to appreciate is that, yes, science, evidence, and facts matter, but from the perspective of a policymaker, this is something that I, reading the chat, that I learned, it's just one among many other valid considerations, like the economics, the culture of the environment where the policy is going to be placed, budget, what the governor thinks about it, and so there are all of these other forces. And so I came out of it having a much better appreciation for the ecosystem of policy and how science is just another piece of the puzzle. And one sort of, I think I came back with a humbled sense of that. So at the end of the year, you sort of learn how a bill becomes a law. You learn how to negotiate technical amendments. You learn how to brief orally and written. You learn how to write a formal structured policy analysis. And though this is a California, legislative policy fellowship, these skills are extremely transferable and applicable to most any other policy career you may go towards. I use those skills now in my role at the National Academies where I work with the committee. So that was 5 minutes and I'll stop there, but in the breakout rooms, I'd be happy to talk more about the day-to-day of the fellowship.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lot of information. I appreciate that. I was actually interested in your panel as well. Next, Jamie, would you like to elaborate? Same question.
So I had, 2 different projects both years. Basically, just as background, National Science Foundation, they get money from the congressional budget and they have different directorates. And from there on, it's just dispersed and they decide, where the funding is going to go according to the discipline. And so when you're inside there, there's not labs or anything. You're seeing how these decisions are being made, funding decisions from people who are scientists themselves. And so my first year, I was placed in the biology directorate within cellular biology. And my role was I was specifically looking at their funding decisions, the scientists across the country that they were choosing to fund, the researchers, the professors, and looking at their demographics. So I was specifically tracking STEM diversity, which is something that I'm really passionate about, and tracking things like if, someone is a person of color and they apply to NSF and they're rejected the first time, what is their likelihood of reapplying? And, is NSF thinking of demographics? Are they thinking of diversity? Are they thinking of institution types? Are they looking at HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions and tribal colleges as much as they're looking at, predominantly white institutions? So my first year, I was working in a lot of their diversity policy domain. And so my second year, I was placed in their division of undergraduate education. And there I was specifically tracking the funding that does go towards Hispanic serving institutions and, tracking just the results that come back. Because after you receive funding from NSF, you have annual reports that you have to submit back, showing the results that you ended up achieving with the funding. So that was my second year, which was really awesome. I really enjoyed that project as well. But I know from my cohort, a lot of people were working on similar projects regarding, STEM diversity, inclusion policies, but also you can do things like tracking and researching implicit bias with the merit review process, helping NSF think of ways in which bias may be playing a role when they're making these funding decisions with their panelists, because, just an example of what a day might look like working inside NSF is there's panels happening all the time where they're flying in, professors, scientists from across the country to come in, sit on these panels, and they'll show them the research proposals that are coming into NSF, and they'll basically argue whether, it merits the funding or not. And so a lot of my, coworkers, they were working on things like that, looking at ways in which bias may be playing a role when these funding decisions are being made. And so just like a great example, something that I really loved is my background's in environmental science, but my first year when I was in the biology sciences, I would get to go to these panels all the time. And I just remember sitting there and watching a biologist from like Wisconsin argue with a chemist from Alaska about this one protein receptor that I knew nothing about, but it just goes to show how thorough and like mindful they are being and how specific they can get about funding the science, whether it's going to bring the results that the people that are applying think it will be. And so basically it's just an opportunity just to see the, thorough kind of process that goes into deciding what science ultimately gets funded. So that's like what a regular day is working at NSF.
Sorry, I'm having like internet connection problems. Sarah, would you like to go next?
Sure. And I was looking at the Research America Fellow page, which I put into the chat, and I realized it actually says individuals with a PhD or other terminal degree who seek science policy experience. So I thought it was PhD, but it looks like you can also have other degrees. And I also realized that maybe I should have described a little bit about what Research America is. I had heard of it and knew some people there, but I didn't really know. So Research America is a nonprofit that advocates for science. And so almost no one in the office is a scientist, but they are all, most of their policy people who are passionate about science. And basically they're very small. There's probably about 12 full-time employees, maybe 10, and then there's a handful of interns and the fellow. So it's really small. And essentially they have members. So like people pay them to get information about science policy on the Hill. And so what they do is they have all these members. So they're responsible for their members. And then they also like collect information from the Hill and then distribute it out to their members and then advocate back the other way. So there's sort of like a touch point between like big universities, biopharmaceutical companies, other nonprofits, patient organizations are like over here, they talk to Research America, Research America talks to the Hill, and then vice versa. So I started in February, and so I actually used the Research America Fellowship as a bridge for the AAAS Fellowship. So again, the AAAS Fellowship, you must have your degree before you can apply. So I defended in October, applied to AAAS in November, but knew I wouldn't hear back about AAAS until February for the first round. And then honestly, I think I interviewed in April and I didn't get my final position letter until June. So it takes a long time, and my lab would have kept me, but I was very tired of working with mice. And so I was looking for other opportunities. And so I used the Research America Fellowship, which for me ended up being 7 months as a bridge between the two. And to be honest, if the world had not turned upside down and, I think actually I could have pivoted directly from the Research America Fellowship into a career and not necessarily needed to do the AAAS Fellowship. I'm learning a ton now, and I think it's really great. And I have to work from my bedroom, and it was very hard to apply for jobs a few months ago. So it's worked out well for me, but it really was a great fellowship. And so essentially so there's like a few teams at Research America. There's a policy team, there's a communication team, there's like an operations team, and there's a development team. And so as a policy fellow, you work with the policy team and the communication team. And to give you an idea, that's probably like 8 people. So it's not like so now I'm at USAID, which is like hundreds of people. So it was like really tiny. And I was only actually in the office for 5 weeks before coronavirus. But while I was in the office, essentially, the thing I really liked about the Research America Fellowship is that every day there were new topics. So when I first started in February, human fetal tissue research was like under fire, and there's a new advisory panel that needs to approve all human fetal tissue research. And so one of my jobs was to read about that and learn about that. There was the very starts of coronavirus. There was a different bond that somebody was working on that I had to read about. And so I really enjoyed the pace of it, especially compared to graduate school. I had a lot of different projects. And there are also a few like constant projects. So there are like some fellow projects that always happen where like you write these certain pieces about certain diseases, you visit the Hill for like general check-ins and like advocating for funding for science. And then there's basically whatever's happening that day. So I did get to go to the Hill once. So they hire a contractor who is a lobbyist, and they send usually fellows or interns along with the lobbyist, and you go to the different offices on the Hill and you advocate. This time we were advocating for ARC funding. So ARC is a science agency that is underfunded. And so we were advocating for ARC funding. And so it was really interesting to get to actually go into congressional offices and sit down and say, basically the lobbyist would give his spiel and then they'd be like, and this is a scientist, and they'd show me. And so I would get to talk about what it's like to be a scientist, which is very cool. So then very quickly, the world turned upside down and I got sent to my room and never to return to the Research America office. And so then I really had to pivot. And so I was because I was excited about like going to a lot of events and everything. And that wasn't going to work out. And so what I did instead is a lot of writing, because one thing I've learned in most of my science policy experience is that people often ask for writing samples or, examples of what you have done and what you have thought about. And as a graduate student, I think there are some opportunities for that, but there were a ton at Research America. And so what I ended up doing is writing, I did whatever, we needed to do that day, but then sort of like as the other piece that I personally like tried to work on was I worked on blogs about coronavirus. So we wrote like explaining science to the general public about coronavirus. I worked on a memo for the Day One Project, which the Day One Project is an initiative to give 100 great science technology proposals to the new president, now the new president, on day one in office. And so I wrote a memo with that, and I think I'm missing some other things, but essentially I pivoted to writing, and I tried really hard to get myself to be able to write as much as possible, while still basically each day I would listen to maybe a congressional hearing, and I would be on calls about an event. Another thing about a nonprofit, which is I didn't really know, but it's good to know that they are always trying to fundraise for themselves, right? They don't have a lot of money and they're not the federal government. So they had multiple fundraising events, and some of which had to be done over Zoom. So it was a lot of like trying to figure out how to do that, which was pretty interesting. So yeah, I think, and also someone asked about international, and I'm actually not sure about Research America. It would definitely be worth asking. I don't know of any of them that were, when I was there, everyone was a US citizen, the interns and the fellows, but definitely would be worth asking. It doesn't specify on their job summary, but I think so far the biggest difference between Research America and USAID is I'm much more like directed at USAID. I have like a very specific role, whereas in Research America, I could switch from human fetal tissue research to skin cancer, so it really jumped all over the place. And so I really enjoyed that actually. And yeah, okay, I'll leave it there, but any more questions, let me know.
All right, thank you. And last, Eileen.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think one of the cool things about AAAS is that there are so many different types of positions in all the different agencies, and you can kind of work closer to what you used to work on. Like I have some friends who work in like environmental aspects at USAID, and that was like what they did their PhD in. And then there are like ways to pivot totally out of like what you used to know, and they'll just, so I have a friend who was like a bioengineer, and now she's working on crisis management at the State Department. And so like it's very fast paced. She's working on all sorts of different stuff. And I think I forgot to mention in my like first introductory statement that I am placed at the State Department in the Office of Global AIDS Coordinator. So we actually work very closely with Sarah's office. So one of the other cool things about being a fellow at State Department, kind of like before I interviewed and started at the State Department, I didn't realize how much, like basically all the other agencies, like DOE, USDA, everything has like a mirror office in the State Department because there's always an international aspect. And so State Department has to have someone who can also like help organize the international aspect of all these other offices that work domestically and globally. And so but there, a lot of these people are career-long diplomats or foreign service officers, and they don't all necessarily have like the technical expertise. And so, the AAAS fellowship has been like really important in bringing in like the science and technical aspects to the State Department. My particular office is very science and public health heavy already. And so I work with a lot of people who are like science technical experts or like medical doctors or epidemiologists. And so it's a little bit more of a rare thing in a State Department to have an office that is like very like evidence-based kind of thinking. So it's so my office oversees all of the HIV/AIDS programming from the US government. So we oversee PEPFAR, which is the US government's foreign assistance to the rest of the world. And it's been really interesting because you get to see like how you can use health, like global health diplomacy and like all these like interagency and international relations. And also how much like monitoring of the program and justification of the program that they have to do to Congress every year in order to continue their funding and programming every year. And so I guess, so my office, it's the one that gets the congressional funding or the funding directly from Congress for PEPFAR. And then we oversee and distribute the funding to the other agencies. So USAID, CDC, DOD, Peace Corps, and HRSA are our main implementing agencies. And those agencies have their own partners on the ground in the like different countries that we work in. And so the agencies oversee their own partners, but my office basically oversees those agencies and kind of is like the overall umbrella kind of agency or office. And so in particular, when I first started, I was assigned a portfolio, like a country portfolio. And for that country, I am like the day-to-day point person for all of the questions. I help with all the operational, like every year there's a country operational plan process to, evaluate what had been done the previous year. How did it go? What gaps are left in programming? How can we improve it? And so we plan for the following year. And so I work very closely with the different agencies on this particular country. So I work with Mozambique, and then also with the government on this planning process. There are also stakeholders involved, and we also work closely with Global Fund. And besides my work with, so my day-to-day with working with Mozambique, I have to compose different sorts of memos. They're pretty like stiff. So I'm not sure, like, I would say there's a lot of like writing involved. Memos are pretty, at least in the State Department, are pretty like standardized, and you incorporate some particular information about like whatever you're doing, but everything is very standardized, has to be cleared, before and it's like, it's not like, and they say like, copying and pasting is like a good thing in government rather than composing your own thing, which might not be cleared. So I work closely with the agencies that are working in country. I feel like there's a lot of like paperwork that needs to be done, a lot of documentation of everything that is done, because every dollar that is spent, we need to be able to justify that this dollar was necessary to help people who are living with HIV/AIDS. I've been doing some, and then also I do like quarterly reviews of all of their data, work with them to like, check in real time how their program is doing and how we can improve it. And then besides my work with Mozambique, within the office, I do more general data analysis work. So we have all this like data that is coming in from the programs in all these different countries for these different kinds of indicators to try to program indicators. And so I've been doing some like projects looking at how our program is addressing HIV and TB co-infections. And so I like submitted a poster for that at like an international conference. So I'm like maintaining a little bit of my like science background. And then I also did like some other side projects and analyzing like the whole program's implementation of like testing policies. And most recently I have been composing part of like this huge 500-page document that's like our annual guidance to the agencies and to our implementing partners to help guide them through the next operational year. And so it's a lot of like looking at how PEPFAR is doing in general and how we might improve it. Yep, so that's my day-to-day.
So for the next question, since we're a little low on time, just anyone can answer. But the question is, what do people generally do after completing the fellowship in terms of career path?
In my case, I think one thing that speaks to the staying power of the CCST fellowship is the vast majority, maybe, maybe not vast, but 60 to 75% of people, even if they're not from California, will stay in California, oftentimes being hired on full-time as a legislative staffer or as an executive branch staffer, sometimes in the office where they work as a fellow, or sometimes they will leverage the relationship that they had with that office to be referred to a different office where they had interest. So that's what happened to me. I was placed in Senate Education and then told my mentor of interest in a different area. I got hired on full time to do assembly, different house, transportation, different area, but more or less, nuts and bolts, the same work. Other folks may go work for we call it third house, so an advocacy or lobbying firm. And to be honest, our pay is certainly very good, but it's more competitive if you're in the private sector. And so that's just something, to be aware of. But a lot of folks will stay in government, or if they do leave government, it's to be an advocate or a lobbyist who is just interacting with government in a little bit of a different way. A minority of folks may do this, like a very small minority, may do the CCST and then use that as a bridge to AAAS. But I think most folks end up either staying in California to do that work. They may go to DC to continue that work. But when I think about the last 3-4 classes, most of the alumni are still somewhere in or near Sacramento.
For AAAS, I think a lot of people go a lot of different places. Some people return back into academia. There are people who, use this fellowship as a break in their professorship, or some people go back, and majority do stay in federal government. And oftentimes there are a lot of people who are able to pivot from their office into a permanent position. And so it all varies, but a lot of people stay in policy and government.
Really quick, I'm going to let the other panelists answer as well if they want to. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to go to breakout rooms sort of soon. And because I need a little bit of time to organize that, I'm going to just tell you how to do it now so that while they're answering, you can do this. So I'm going to share my screen and you're going to be able to see that we have it set up so that you can change your name in Zoom.
Sorry, Shannon, can you make it not presenter view? You can only see the slides small.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, don't judge my tabs. But can you see the whole thing now? Okay. Yeah, so if everyone can just change their name to the person they want to enter a breakout room with, keeping in mind that we're going to do 2 of these. So you can save one for later. But yeah, so if you guys can spend the time to do that while Sarah and Jamie discuss further, and then I'll start preparing the breakout rooms.
So what was that question that we were on again?
It's about future careers, right?
Yeah. Jamie, do you want to go?
All right. So it honestly varies. With the undergraduate students, I feel like there's a pattern that a lot of your mentors are just going to push you to want to go to grad school, and a lot of cohort members end up, getting the GRFP and using that to go to graduate school. So that's one pathway. Other people, it's a great track to work in public service. So you'll see a lot of people staying in Washington, DC. And the nice thing about NSF is, the GRFP. So the GRFP is a fellowship program for graduate funding that's run through NSF. And it's a pretty large award, and it goes towards graduate school. So you could be pursuing your master's or a PhD, and it just has to be in the sciences. So any discipline that's covered by NSF. So that can be biological sciences, engineering, computer science, public policy is considered STEM. So any STEM degree that you're, pursuing post-grad, the GRFP helps you fund it. And so that's one pathway. And I mean, the great thing about NSF is you make a lot of, mentors. You meet a lot of people who want to help you with your career trajectory. So especially, a lot of my friends that, like myself, that just graduated in this pandemic, a lot of our NSF mentors, found us jobs. I have a lot of friends that are working in different federal agencies in DC now, and that was through connections that they made at NSF. And I mean, just from a personal experience, NSF really helped me because I graduated this, May in a pandemic, so not the ideal time to be graduating from undergrad, but NSF gives their summer scholars a lot of conference funding. And so I went to 2 different conferences. The first one was actually in DC. And when I was there, I met someone that runs this organization in Columbia in agroecology, which is something I'm interested in. And he ultimately wrote my affiliation letter for my Fulbright, because originally I was going to do a Fulbright research award in Columbia. And so that was originally going to be my graduate plan, but due to international travel, that grant was suspended. But at a different conference that NSF sent me to, which is, it's called SACNAS, and it's specifically a graduate school conference, and it took place in Hawaii the year I went. And I met a lot of graduate schools, got fee waivers, got help with GRE, different graduate school resources. And from there, I ended up, making connections. And that's ultimately how I ended up, after Fulbright was canceled, being able to go to Carnegie Mellon and, just jump straight into graduate school. So, it can really lead you anywhere. I think, the main takeaway is NSF really helps you with networking, developing connections. You meet people that really want to help you out. And so it's because of NSF that I had options really after graduating this past May. So it really depends. I mean, you can end up in DC, you can really end up anywhere. The NSF name, it can take you many places.
So we had one more question, but I think we're going to save it for breakout rooms. So if the panelists, maybe like if there's extra time after, or if people are interested in the breakout rooms, you can talk about kind of what you're doing now and how that changed from where we started, or where you started. But yeah, I think we'll save that for people to get excited about in the breakout rooms. Okay, so
there's also a few people who haven't yet changed their names. So if you haven't, can you please do that, or I will randomly assign you, which is also fine. And I hope that you're all available to speak and stuff. All right, then I'm going to do some random assignments. Okay. 1 second.
I guess while Shannon's doing that, I'd like to, I don't know, I think it's great how, how I see like science policy is like diversifying, and in contrast to maybe like academia, to like where we didn't actually plan this, but it's great that like all of our panelists are female, and each one of you kind of from a different descent, a different place, and it's great to like see and hear like from this diverse set of experiences. So I'd like to thank our panelists again for coming by. Yeah, and maybe we'll, in the breakout rooms, we'll get to hear like what are those issues that really make each one of our panelists like tick, like why did they initially come into science policy? Because I feel a lot of people are driven by a particular issue or set of issues.
Yep. So I am ready. I'm going to open the rooms. So everyone just enter the room, and I will stay in the main room. So if you want, if there's an issue, just come out and I will try to fix it. All right. So sending those now.
Thank you, Shannon.
Mhm. Nabila, are you having an issue joining the room? Hi, Justin. We're doing breakout rooms right now.
Hello, hello, welcome back, everybody.
Yes. Welcome back. So now for the second one, if you guys will, if you haven't already, change your name to who you would like to talk to for the next one. And then I think maybe Tala was going to lead a bit of a debrief while I'm moving everyone around again.
Yeah, so does anyone have anything from the first breakout room that they wanted to share? Anything really interesting or cool points? I can start just because we had a good discussion with Chanel. Yeah, we were discussing like pay and, you know, like kind of movability within policy work. So I think, you know, although the pay is pretty competitive for a lot of these fellowships, she mentioned how you really do get close with a lot of lawmakers and you have a lot of influence. as opposed to like a lobbyist who maybe is getting paid more, but they aren't as close with, you know, a policymaker. So I thought that was a really cool point.
Yeah, I think Eileen was was asked about like how much does the administration affect kind of the operations and whatnot, and she was talking about how her office is like pretty bipartisan and functional, and yeah, she also thought like she kind of started on like a state level in terms of like advocacy, and she wanted to like with the State Department, she feels like, you know, 10,000-foot view where the HIV kind of program that the in total is like I think she said $6 billion program, and just her program at Mozambique is 400 million. And so how it like always kind of hits her like, wow, like this is huge, this is a lot.
Sorry, I'm almost done.
Yeah, I think as someone who knew very little about policy, I guess I'm like growing more and more interested in it with, yeah, I think we've kind of heard this from other people, but I guess being able to focus in on an issue that you're really passionate about is really cool. And that was another thing we were talking about in the breakout room. Chanel was kind of talking about how important it is to fall in love with the issue behind your bill and not just the bill itself, you know. And I think that's a really good point and something that probably drives a lot of people in policy work.
Okay, I think everyone should be all set. So I'm going to send everyone to breakout rooms. And again, I will be here in the main room waiting. So let me know if there's any issues.
Well, that was a great second session. Thanks again to our panelists.
Yeah, so before we wrap up, does anyone want to share anything about what was discussed during the second breakout session?
I guess I'll just toss one out there, but also sensitive on time. Eileen was saying how the AAAS fellowship, like they encourage like the fellows to reach out and help like new applicants, and then even as she's like considering what she'll do next, they're like helping her like get in touch with people in places that she might be interested in, because she's from the West Coast and she was thinking about, you know, now bringing her knowledge and kind of applying it on the public health side in California. And so they're helping her find people who have been in California or who are currently in California. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. These fellowships, it seems, can open a lot of networking doors that can help lead you to a variety of careers. Really quickly, does anyone else have anything? Okay, if not. So Sky, I wasn't sure if you wanted to share your screen for a minute, if you have like contact info for your group and a little wrap up slide. I have one for ours that I'm gonna do close us out? I can also go
Scott.
first.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I don't have too much. I just kind of have our contact slide. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank the panelists for being patient and helping out. I want to thank everyone who participated and their great questions. Once again, if you're a Pitt student or if you're in the general Pitt area, we encourage you to come by, attend our events with PSBG, and help out if you'd like as well, because all of our programming is and what we do is all driven by who's there. So if there's something that you're not seeing that we're doing, like we encourage you to come by and make it happen. So yeah, I'd also like to thank NSPN for kind of connecting everyone, because otherwise this wouldn't happen. Yeah, our next general meeting is going to be on December 2nd, and we're right now working with the Women in Sciences and Engineering group to watch Picture a Scientist together and have a discussion, talk a little bit about the policy, and we'll have someone who has advocated for Title IX related things at the university, locally, and at the state level, and she's going to come by and talk to us.
Cool. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly now. And so, yes, so this is our information for PSPDG. You can go to our website to get on our listserv if you want to be the most up to date on all of our upcoming events and ways to get involved. You can also follow us on social media, in particular Twitter, and you can also email us. And we have a variety of programming, as I mentioned at the beginning. We're currently in the middle of our science communication workshop series. The next workshop will be in December. It will be on online writing, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry.
It will be on December 4 on social media.
Oh, December 4th on social media. So how to use social media as a scientist. We'll also be doing a variety of science policy programming in the spring, and science diplomacy stuff. We are just so many embassy collaborations and collaborations with the United Nations. So please reach out if you're interested. And now in our new virtual world, it's easier than ever to be involved, even if you're not a Penn student. So yeah, with that, I really want to thank all of the panelists for their time and for being so wonderful, and for all of you for participating. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, also, if the panelists have time and you guys want to stick around, you can just like briefly chat after the call's over. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending.
Okay, that's fine, Chanel. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah, we wanted to just thank you guys again and kind of, hear any like thoughts or anything you had on, yeah, I guess anything. It was just really nice to hear, I guess, from people who've done all of these fellowships.
How did you guys think it went, panelists?
I think it went well. I think the breakout session is a really good idea. People got to ask more directed questions, and I think you just forget things that are really crucial when you're talking to a larger group, and then they'd be like, wait, what about this? And I'd be like, oh, right. So I think the breakout sessions is good. And it's also kind of nice. I saw some people dropped off when they went to the breakout sessions. And so then it kind of hones in on the people that are really interested, which I think is helpful as well. Not that I wouldn't be happy to talk to somebody that wasn't as interested, but sort of directs it that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. The rest of the panelists, did you feel like it went well and there's plenty to talk about and stuff?
definitely. I think, yeah, like Sarah said, it was nice to have a breakout session, but also like the panel overview too. And it was interesting to learn about all the other experiences.
That's great.
Yeah, that was really great. I agree. The breakout rooms, it really helps you realize the stuff that you don't, hit on when you first talk the first time. So it was, I think overall it was super effective. Thank you guys for organizing it.
Yeah, that was so informative. I was like, really, we could have done like a 4-hour panel, I feel like, and been like still getting interesting information from you guys. Because the 4 of you together answering questions, I was like, we're gonna have to keep going a little bit longer because we need to like hear more stuff. So I really, really appreciate it. Was there anything that we could have done better, that we should have done better? We won't be offended. I really want to do better next time.
No, I think it was good. I think I kept forgetting what the question was. So maybe maybe if there's like a list and you want to send it, maybe you did send it to me, and I really apologize if you did, but I guess I didn't have questions in front of me. And so then I might not have forgotten, but I think it went fine anyway. Like I always feel like on panels, like you're talking about yourself, right? There's like nothing really easier to talk about. So maybe your research, but but that one thing, or you could just have it like in the chat, maybe like a document that people can see what the questions are. But yeah, otherwise, I think you guys did great. I like that it's also a combination of Pitt and Penn. Glad you guys get to work together. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. We've never done an event like this where it's like 2 groups together. But yeah, we actually were thinking about sending the questions in advance, and we went back and forth a bit. And then it was too late when we decided we thought we wanted to, and we didn't want to send you it like yesterday because we thought that would be a little rough.
Yeah, no worries. I think I might not have been able to like answer them, but then I could just like put them up, and then I could just because and then I think in one of the breakout rooms, you asked me a question, like a second question, and I realized halfway through, I'm like, I don't remember what she asked me, just because I apparently have, Dory brain. I have to run because coworker is calling me, but I thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice to meet other panelists as well. Bye, guys.
It was nice seeing you again, Sarah.
Yeah,
Good one.
bye.
Thanks, Jamie. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it. Thank you.
No, definitely. And I would be interested in seeing the handout as well, because I was realizing in my breakout rooms, which I don't know if you want to contact Dr. Green from NSF about this, or I can talk to her about it, but they don't even have their application up on the website because they have weird ways of recruiting for people. But people were asking me, how do I even apply for this? It's not even there. So I don't know if Sherry spoke about a different application process with you or anything, but she doesn't even have like a website for it. So
Yeah, she didn't mention anything about the actual application.
okay. I'm gonna talk
Yeah.
to her about that. Okay. Yeah, because I definitely, if there's gonna be like an info sheet, then I would want them to know how to apply. So I'll talk to her about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. We were probably not going to send the sheet until like early next week.
Great.
So yeah, if she gets back before then, that would be great. But it's like the weekend, so but yeah, that would be great to know. Yeah, it was super hard to find information about the like alumni or like anything about it. Like I didn't even know how many people they take a year, and yeah, so I'm glad that
It was so hard to find you.
Yeah.
I know. It's weird too, because I got recruited from them through like a different organization that matches people with like internships in DC basically. So they have weird avenues of doing it, but they should have like a direct application. So I'll talk to her about that. So that because
There's not even a LinkedIn page for it.
I know. I know. Yeah, NSF can be weird like that, but perfect. Well, thank you guys. It was nice meeting everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great matching on the nails and the eyeglasses.
I swear I don't plan these things, but they always happen to me, and it seems like I planned them. But thank you.
All right, have a good weekend.
Bye.
Hey.
Hello.
Okay. So it's just us now. What do we think?
Just yeah.
I didn't hear anything you said. Can you repeat that?
I just said it's just us now. What do we think?
Oh, okay. I was like, oh God. I didn't hear anything that Jamie said either. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna smile.
She's
Yeah, I
going to
thought-
help us find how to apply so we can have it on the info sheet. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tyler.
I thought it went well. I guess the only thing that like sometimes happens with panels, that's what is just like people will go over on like a single question and then it's like, oh, like how, I don't know, it's just hard to account for. So I guess, yeah, I think sending beforehand just so people can kind of like write down the points they want to talk about can help like limit it going on for a while. But I thought it was really helpful. I like learned a ton.
That's awesome. How did everyone's breakout rooms go?
I really love that girl that I was with. She was like brutally honest.
Sarah?
Yes. She was like, I'm not having a good time, but like, who's having a good time these days? I was like, oh, you hate it? She's like, oh yeah, I hate it. I was like really sad up until November. And I'm like, it's November now.
Yeah, Sarah's a very like huge smile and then boom, the truth. Like it's just like you get a smile and then like 2 seconds later it's like we're going in.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I just thought it was good. Yeah, a lot of good information from Eileen, because like the AAAS fellowship is like pretty complicated in terms of like just how it works and like what's available and whatnot. And so I think I have some like good material. Yeah.
And
I
how
don't
about
know,
you,
like
Val?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty informative and I definitely learned like a ton from the breakout room. People asked pretty good questions as well. So
Were there undergrad, like, were there actually, how many people in the room with Jamie?
the first time there were 4 and the second was 5 and none were undergrads.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was such a bummer. It's like, okay, so I guess we know now for the future that we either need to do like a substantial amount of targeting undergraduates, specifically like really going out of our way, not just having you like send it to some listserv or something. But we really need to like really go above and beyond to get undergraduates, or to just expect that we'll have limited undergraduate turnout, which I don't want to just accept, because I've had some really good undergraduates working on, obviously you working on this, but then the science policy 101 workshop we did, there were 2 undergrads on that panel or on that workshop, and they did so fantastically amazing that I just would hate it if they felt like they were only doing things to advance like graduate student education. So need to think through that one a little bit more. Were you going to say something, Sky? I feel like when Val started talking, you were also about to say something.
No. Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know if there's an answer. I also think it's like, yeah, it's like not clear how much, like what experience should you actually have before going for these positions, right? Because like Eileen was saying, some people just out of graduate school like will get a career position. Some people do AAAS. Like, I mean, Eileen had like a bunch of like student organizations background, and and some SciPol stuff, and she did some like local health thing. But yeah, I guess the answer is, well, as much as you want. Will probably increase your chances, but
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, it's fairly variable. Like I know one of my friends is doing AAAS, or she she maybe just finished. I don't know if she re-upped for her second year, but she was like involved with PSPDG, but only for like less than a year before she applied. So she wasn't able to like do that much or have that much like on her CV, but she still was accepted to the program. And like, I'm not sure what she was doing aside from that. So I think they count like a lot of different types of experience as like I think they care about like leadership experience and like interest, like a demonstrated interest in policy, which doesn't necessarily have to be through like a group like ours, but it could be like a side project that you do through something else. I think it probably is also how you pitch yourself in the application, but I don't know.
I'm sorry, I have to go to lab, and so I'm gonna have to head out.
Well,
Okay.
do we want to really quickly, so what is our timeline for getting together a blog post? And then I think Cassandra was super busy and she didn't, she might not be involved. So if Cassandra, if you could at least send us the notes and stuff, unless you still want to do it, you were just not on the Slack, which is fine too. But yeah.
What are we talking about? The blog post? I thought we were each just giving notes about our rooms.
Yeah, where are I think I sent a doc, and I don't know if I just opened like a different doc, but I don't see anyone else's notes on the notes from panel.
Oh, I mean, like,
document.
I'm gonna write them like.
Oh, I have them on a sticky note on my computer. I can copy paste them and once we're done.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys can paste them onto the doc I sent in the Slack, that way I have it for the info sheet. And yeah, I'm going to be pretty busy this weekend. So if anyone wants to help with the info sheet, that would be good. Otherwise, it might be a little like late, but I think from all of these notes, we can put together the info sheet and the blog post. Maybe we can do the blog post, like, I guess in terms of timeline, I think we can, I don't know, maybe like to have it done by 2 weeks. What do you guys think? Because I don't think it's like urgent or anything, especially with the info sheet.
Yeah, I think if we aim for the info sheet to be sort of early next week, and then the blog post in 2 weeks or something like that, and we can coordinate more over Slack with like who's going to do what and how it's all going to look and go and all of that stuff. Does that sound good?
So do we, let's like have a draft ready by like Friday or Saturday, and then we can kind of have a look if we want over the weekend, and then maybe meet early. Oh wait, but it's Thanksgiving. I don't know how that's going to play into everything.
Yeah, so maybe give it 3 weeks. And so we can coordinate over Slack though with like.
I think we should meet at least one more time, right? I mean, we should meet once for that so we can like get everything together so we know how everything flows since everyone's writing a different part. And then for the final edits, like we should be able to do everything over Google.
Right. So I think maybe if we try to have a draft by like the end of the week after Thanksgiving kind of thing, and then we can meet once we all have like draft parts done. And then we can discuss the drafts and different edits and whatever, and then we can do the rest virtually going forward. Is that good?
Yeah, and I did want to note, so yeah, this is something I guess we put up on our like blogs on on our personal groups, and then we can get it put onto NSPN. I already talked to the comms person and they were interested. But for that, we would I think it would be nice, and they also were saying how like, yeah, that would probably be like the best way to do it, but also just like a couple like preface it with a like with just the experience of working across our groups.
Yeah, totally. And we can discuss, I think once we have the drafts at our meeting there, we can discuss how we want to do that.
Exactly. But yeah, we'll just focus for now on like the material of the kind of recap.
And I'll try to have the video, at least a private link on YouTube that I can send to you guys like really soon. before I like edit it and whatever, so that if anyone like wanted to remember what happened during the panel that we recorded, we can have that. And I'll send the chat too from the Zoom
Can
call.
we send that as well as the document, maybe the info sheet document and the blog post document? Can we send that in an email? Because it's sometimes